Hello everyone, and welcome back. Out here on the loneliest roads in the world, truckers carry more than cargo. We carry nights we don't talk about, moments that stayed with us long after the engine cooled, moments that changed the way we look at the dark. If you're here, it means you're ready to ride with us again. Down the highways where radios go silent, headlights catch things that shouldn't be there, and every mile has its own secret. Before we roll into tonight's story, make sure you subscribe so you never miss another true trucker nightmare. And when it's over, drop a comment and tell me what you think really happened out there. Alright, let's shift into the dark. I've run freight through the Sierra Nevada more times than I can count. I know those mountains, the way the temperature drops fast after midnight, the way the fog curls down the slopes like it's alive, the way the radio goes dead in pockets of the range no matter what equipment you're running. That night was worse than usual. I was westbound on I-80 hauling 15,000 pounds of bulk hardware out of Reno. Empty enough to catch the wind, heavy enough to feel sluggish through the grades. The weather had been clear when I started climbing, but around 2 a.m. the fog rolled in so thick my high beams turned into white walls in front of me. I flipped the lights down to low, slowed to 40, and kept channel 19 open, not because I expected chatter, but because hearing a little static makes the cab feel less empty. The heater was humming. The coffee was burning my tongue. The whole cab felt warm, tight, pressurized against the cold outside. My breath left faint ghosts on the windshield every time I exhaled. By 3 a.m., visibility was maybe 30 feet. Headlights cut tunnels through the cloud and dissolved instantly. Even the reflectors on the guardrails were faint, like they were losing confidence in themselves. That's when the CB broke. Not with a voice, not at first. Just a sharp crackle like someone slapped the mic on the other end. I leaned forward, one hand tightening on the wheel. "Go ahead," I said. My voice sounded too loud in the cab. Nothing. Just a low hiss. Then a whisper. Not normal static garbled speech. Not someone far away. A whisper, close to the mic, close enough that I heard breath first. Wet, shaky. And then a voice like someone trying not to be heard by anyone but me. 41.895, 120.451. Coordinates. Whispered slow, like each number hurt to say. I frowned and pulled my paper atlas from the seat beside me. Old habit. GPS works fine, but I like a physical reference. I traced the numbers with my finger. The coordinates pointed to an old rest area about 6 miles ahead. A place that had been shut down years ago after budget cuts and a mudslide that damaged part of the exit ramp. I passed it before. The bathrooms were sealed with plywood. The picnic benches swallowed by weeds. Nobody should have been there. Nobody should have been broadcasting from there, especially not in a whisper like the mic was touching their lips. I pressed the talk button. Break 1-9. Say again? You injured. Kept it calm. Professional. Could have been a driver in trouble. Could have been someone stranded. The reply came back immediately. Not whispered this time, rushed. Panicked. But still close. Too close. Don't stop, don't there. The voice cut out like someone yanked the cord from the radio. I felt the cold long before the temperature actually dropped. It started at the back of my neck. That tight, crawling feeling you get when someone's standing too close behind you. Except there was no one there. Just my jacket hung on the hook and the soft rumble of the sleeper. It kept rolling. Fog swirled under my low beams like mist off a lake. The road curved left. Up ahead, I could just barely make out the faded green sign. Rest area, closed half a mile. My fingers tightened on the wheel. That's when the CB lit up again. All 3 indicators flashing like a full-power broadcast was coming through. But the sound was wrong. Not talking, not whispering, breathing, fast, wet, the kind of breathing you hear from someone running for their life. It filled the cab like the person was sitting in the seat beside me. I reached for the radio to turn the volume down. Before I touched it, a woman's voice cut through the breathing, but not just calling out, screaming my name. Mike, 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 don't stop. My whole body went tight. My foot lifted from the accelerator without me thinking. I hadn't told her my name. Nobody on 19 knew my voice that well. And it wasn't some generic driver or someone. It was my name, screamed like she could see me. I grabbed the knob and twisted it off. The voice didn't stop. The speaker was dead. No power, no light. But the breathing kept filling the cab. Louder, closer, like it was coming from inside the dashboard. Or under it. I unplugged the radio completely, yanked the cord right from the back. Still didn't stop. By the time I reached the rest area exit ramp, the breathing had turned into choked sobs. The woman kept whispering my name between them. Each time she said it, the sound moved. First by the passenger door, then behind my seat, then up by the sleeper curtain. The fog thinned just enough that I saw the rest area entrance off to my right. The place looked wrong. Too dark. Too empty. The chain-link fence around the bathrooms rattled in wind I couldn't feel. One of the old street lamps flickered once, then died completely. I passed the exit without slowing. The second my trailer cleared the off-ramp, everything stopped. Not faded, not cut out slowly, just gone. Dead silent. The kind of silence where your ears ring because the shock is too sudden. I drove another 15 miles before I dared put the radio back in place. When I did, it booted normally. No saved messages. No playback buffer. Nothing. Next morning, I stopped at a way station outside Sacramento. A state trooper walked past my truck, paused, then doubled back. "You came through the Sierra last night?" he asked. "Yeah. That old rest area. You didn't stop there, did you?" "No," I said. My voice sounded rough. "Why?" He glanced toward the mountains, jaw tightening. 2 truckers went missing up there. Different years. Different companies. Both last heard transmitting on Channel 19. Both reported strange noises before their signals cut. He looked at me like he was trying to decide how much to say. "We searched that area last month after another complaint. Found an old CB unit half buried in the mud. Wires torn out. Looked like someone tried to broadcast while..." He stopped himself. Then he asked, "You hear anything unusual?" I thought about the whisper, the coordinates, the screaming, the radio still breathing even after it was unplugged. I just shook my head. "No, sir. Nothing." He nodded slowly, but the way he looked at me said he didn't believe it. And he shouldn't. I heard every second of it. I can still hear that woman's voice if I sit in a quiet cab too long. Still hear the exact way she said my name. And sometimes, late at night, when I roll through a dead patch of road and the fog gets thick enough to blur the reflectors, Channel 19 lights up again. Just for a moment. Just long enough for someone on the other end to breathe into my cab. I run nights more than days. Less traffic, fewer idiots on the road, and there's something about being the only set of headlights threading through all that emptiness that settles me. This was about 3 years back, late fall, somewhere between Green River and Moab, Utah. Red Rock country. If you've never driven it at night, it's hard to explain. The cliffs don't disappear when the sun goes down. They just turn into black walls that lean over you, like you're running the bottom of a dry ocean. I was hauling auto parts eastbound, light load in a newer Peterbilt, governed at 65. Weather was clear and cold. The kind of cold where the defroster has to fight to keep the corners of the windshield clear. The dash lights were dimmed down, CB on 19, engine humming at that steady RPM that lets your brain slip into autopilot without fully letting go. It was just after 2 a.m. I remember because I just passed a blue service sign promising gas and food in 40 miles, and I was debating whether to stop or push through. My thermos was half empty. Stale coffee smell clung to the cab, mixed with that permanent diesel and dust scent that lives in the upholstery. The road had been mine alone for at least an hour. No oncoming traffic. No taillights ahead. Just mile markers ticking by and the occasional reflector catching my low beams. Then, like someone flipped a switch, I wasn't alone. I came around a long, lazy curve and saw them. 3 sets of taillights in the distance, perfectly spaced. Red dots in the dark, all moving at the same steady pace. I eased off the throttle for a second, more out of surprise than anything, then rolled back into it. I was running a little hot schedule-wise and figured I'd catch them and pass on the next safe stretch. As I closed the gap, something felt off. No logos on the trailers. No DOT numbers, no company names, no faded vinyl outlines where graphics used to be. Just dull, blank boxes, like someone had sprayed over everything with flat gray. The tractors were worse. They were old. Not fleets a little behind on upgrades, old. I'm talking 1960s cabovers, squared-off noses, round headlights sunk deep in chrome bezels. You don't see those running long haul anymore. Not in a tight 3-truck convoy like that. Maybe one out of nostalgia. Not 3 all information. Their paint jobs, what I could see of them in my low beams, looked wrong too. Colors that used to be vibrant but had faded to murky, sun-bleached shades. Greens that were almost gray. A blue that had gone dull and cloudy. Rust traced around the wheel wells and across the back of the cabs in spiderweb patterns. They held the lane like they were welded to it. Perfect spacing. No one drifted. No brake taps, no lane corrections, no nothing. I reached for the Mike Habit. Westbound convoy, mile marker. I checked the post as I rolled past it. 72. You boys got a copy on 19? Static. Just the soft hiss of an empty channel. I gave it a few seconds and tried again. 3-truck convoy, no markings, east of Green River. You got ears on. Nothing. No crackle, no carrier, no bleed from another channel. Just dead air. My speedo read 62. I was closing the distance slowly. Their taillights glowed brighter, resolving into individual lamps. I noticed another detail then. No reflective tape on the trailers. No modern conspicuity markings at all. Just old, dim bulbs, a couple of them flickering like they were running on weak power. I told myself it was just some old outfit limping a few antiques along for a last run. Maybe a club. Maybe a movie shoot packing up. There's always some weird explanation for the unusual out here. But another mile or two went by, and they never broke formation. Not once. The road straightened out. My GPS showed a long, clean stretch with no on-ramps, no crossings, no major curves for several miles. Perfect place to pass. I signaled left, more out of habit than necessity. Nobody behind me, nobody coming the other way. Just me and those 3 relics. When I slid into the passing lane and brought my nose up to the rear trailer, the unease I'd been ignoring finally crawled up my spine. Up close, their trailer doors were wrong. No modern hinges. No standard toggle locks. Just big, old-style steel latches, streaked with rust, handles hanging at odd angles, like they'd been forced open and slammed shut too many times. There were no license plates, front or back, just empty mounts. Convoy, I'm gonna ease by on your left, I said anyway, because doing things by the book felt like a lifeline. Hang steady. No answer. I eased up to the first tractor. The driver's side window was up, curtain drawn halfway. The cab interior was dark, no dash glow, no movement. For a second, my low beams painted the side of the cab enough that I could see the company name that used to be there. Just the faint shadow of letters long peeled away. Couldn't make them out. I rolled past the second truck. Same thing, curtain down. No light in the cab. No reflection in the mirror. Engine clearly running, wheels clearly turning, but it might as well have been remote controlled. That's when my hair stood up. You spend years on the road, you get good at sensing another vehicle's presence. That slight buffet of air, the change in engine noise as 2 rigs run side by side, the tension in the wheel as wind shifts around you. Passing those 3, there was nothing. No push, no pull, no turbulence. It was like they weren't there, like I was driving through a picture of trucks instead of the real thing. I reached the nose of the lead truck and brought my cab level with his. I couldn't help it, I looked. His windshield was dark. No glow from gauges. No high-vis vest draped over the seat. No phone light. No shape behind the wheel. Just the faintest suggestion of a headrest and empty space. I realized then that my throat felt dry, like I'd been breathing desert sand instead of conditioned air. I rolled a little more throttle, wanting to get clear and drop back in front. The Pete responded, engine note climbing. The GPS showed I was at 65. My speedo agreed. But I wasn't pulling ahead. The lead truck kept exact pace with me. Perfectly. Like we were locked together. I glanced down at the speedometer. 65, steady. I glanced back at the GPS. It read 42. For a split second, my headlights flickered. The dash lights blinked out and back on again. Every gauge dropped to 0, then popped back to life. The road in front of me was empty. No lead truck. No middle one. No trailer. I was alone in the passing lane. My own headlights stretching down an open ribbon of asphalt. My hands locked on the wheel so tight my knuckles hurt. I held my lane, heart pounding, waiting for the impact I couldn't see. Waiting to feel metal meet metal if I'd somehow drifted. Nothing. Just the faint, distant wind over the cab and the soft hiss of tires on cold pavement. I checked my mirrors. Empty behind me. I checked over my shoulder and eased back into the right lane. Signal ticking like a metronome in the quiet. I drove 2 more miles before I could make myself touch the CB. Any westbound got eyes on 3 eastbound trucks. Running tight, old cabovers, unmarked, near mile 75? My voice sounded wrong to my own ears, thin, stretched, dead air. For the rest of that stretch, I didn't see a single vehicle. No four-wheelers, no other big rigs. Just my own reflection in the glass. I made it to a small truck stop outside Moab a little before 4. One of those smaller places. 2 diesel islands. A diner that smells like burnt bacon and coffee from 20 feet out. A handful of hard-used parking spots. I backed into a corner slot and set the brakes. Air dumped with a sigh that felt almost human. Inside the cab, the sudden silence pressed on my ears. I could feel the vibration of the idling engine through the floor, that familiar, almost comforting tremor. I should have gone in, grabbed coffee, stretched my legs. Instead, I reached up and pulled the SD card from my dash cam. I don't know what I expected. Maybe proof that I'd passed 3 old ghosts hauling nothing through the canyons. Maybe confirmation I'd just hallucinated out of fatigue. I plugged the card into my laptop and scrubbed back to where I remembered catching their taillights. The footage showed empty road. My headlights, the center line, the faint suggestion of rock walls on either side. I watched the timestamp roll forward. For 30 full minutes, it was just me. I felt my skin go cold. I slowed the playback around the time I'd pulled alongside the first truck. Frame by frame, second by second. Still nothing. Just my lane, my lights, the occasional mile marker whipping past. Then, in one single frame, less than a blink, something else appeared. In the top corner of the image, where my driver's side mirror caught a sliver of the lane behind me, a chrome grille filled the glass. Old-style bars, round headlights, close enough that if it had been real, I shouldn't have seen anything but bumper. Next frame, it was gone. Just my own taillights reflected in the dark. I went back again, paused right on that frame, zoomed until the pixels blurred. All I could make out was the curve of the grille, the glint of chrome, and the hint of a number painted on the corner of the hood. A 2 or maybe a 7. Old font, old style. I sat there in the glow of the laptop, the cab around me warm and small, the outside world cold and indifferent. The smell of diesel and dust felt suddenly heavier, like it was pressing down on my lungs. The next morning, I showed the clip to another driver I know. Old-timer. Been running since the 80s. He watched without saying a word, thumb hooked into his belt. When the chrome grille flashed in the mirror, he leaned in, squinting. "Looks like the old Miller rigs," he murmured. "Out of Denver. 3-truck team. They ran that corridor in the 60s. He frowned. "Heard they lost a convoy in a winter storm back then. Wreck never got fully recovered. Rockslide buried half the site before they could pull everyone out." He straightened up and gave me a look I couldn't read. "Could just be glare," he added, like he was trying to take the edge off. "Cameras do weird things at night." Maybe he's right. But out there, in those canyons, I still get that prickling on the back of my neck when the road goes empty for too long. Sometimes my speedo and GPS don't quite agree for a mile or 2. Sometimes I catch myself checking the mirrors more than I should. And every now and then, in just the right angle of glass, in just the right split second, I swear I see an old cab over running tight on my bumper. No logos, no driver, just that chrome grille close enough to touch, gone when I blink. I've been a long-haul driver for almost 16 years. You pick up a lot of road legends in that time. Ghost exits, phantom brake lights, hitchhikers who vanish after you pass them. Most of it is harmless superstition, stories told over burnt diner coffee at 3 in the morning. But mile marker 112 in Wyoming, that one was different. Drivers didn't laugh about it. They didn't joke. They just said, "Don't stop there," and left it at that. I passed it 50 times and never saw a thing. Just empty prairie land, the kind that stretches out so flat you can see headlights 20 miles away. No trees, no buildings, no terrain to hide anything. So I stopped believing the stories. Until the night I didn't have a choice. I was westbound on I-25, temperature barely above freezing. My coolant gauge had been bouncing for 20 miles, and I finally lost a trailer light after hitting a patch of rough pavement. I checked the GPS. Next town was still 30 minutes out. My logbook was tight. I needed to fix the fuse before DOT saw me rolling dirty. So I pulled onto the shoulder without realizing where I was. When I stepped out and saw the marker 10 feet behind my trailer, 112, my stomach dropped. I almost climbed right back into the truck. But the wind was calm, the road empty, and the night clear. The sky above Wyoming gets so big it feels like you're standing on the bottom of space itself. Stars everywhere. Silence stretching forever. Nothing to fear except the cold. I grabbed the flashlight from my cab and walked toward the rear of the trailer, boots crunching on frost-crusted gravel. The air smelled like diesel and dry winter sage. The trailer's metal skin popped softly as it cooled, echoing in the emptiness. I knelt by the fuse panel, my breath fogging in front of me, hands stiff from the cold. I flicked open the cover and started checking each fuse with a gloved thumb. That's when I felt it. Someone standing right behind me. You know the feeling, a shift in air pressure, the faint warmth of a presence, the sense your back isn't exposed anymore. I didn't hear footsteps, but I felt weight in the air, like someone tall was looking down at me. I turned fast, my flashlight beam slicing through the dark. Nobody, just the empty stretch of highway. Dry grass, cold, dead night. I scanned both sides of the road, swinging the beam across the ditch, the fences, the gravel. Nothing moved. No animals, no wind, no other lights for miles. The silence was so complete it made my ears ring. I swallowed hard, finished replacing the fuse, and closed the panel with a metallic snap that sounded too loud. I forced myself to walk, not run, back to the cab. When I climbed in, I locked the doors immediately. The cab felt warm, but too small. Like the heat couldn't quite chase off the cold that had followed me in. I flicked on the interior light and checked the mirrors out of habit. That's when I saw him. A tall figure standing behind my trailer, perfectly still. No features, no clothing visible. Just a long, pale shape, like a man cut out of moonlight. The beam of my taillights caught the edges of him, but they didn't reflect. They seemed to sink into him like water. I blinked hard, thinking it was a trick of the lights. He didn't move, not even a tilt of the head. Just standing there, watching. Cold spread through my chest, slow and heavy, like ice melting backward. I threw the truck into gear, released the brakes, and eased onto the highway. The engine growled low, steady, familiar, the one sound I trusted. I checked the mirror again as I gained speed. The figure didn't chase, didn't turn, didn't vanish. He just faded into the dark as distance grew between us. For a moment, I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. 3 minutes later, I passed mile marker 113. Nothing unusual. I told myself I was tired, that I'd let road myths get under my skin. Then I checked the mirror. He was there again. Same place, exactly the same distance behind me as before. Not running, not walking, just there like reality had redrawn itself to put him back into frame. My pulse thudded in my throat. I pushed the truck to 65. The vibration through the floor intensified. The engine hummed like it understood the urgency. Next marker, 114. I swallowed, forced myself to look. There he was, closer this time. Not by much, but enough that I felt pressure in the cab. a subtle tightening, like the air had lost some warmth. I shut off the interior light to clear the glare and stared harder into the mirror. The figure had no edges, no outline, just a tall, pale shape that seemed less like a person and more like the idea of one. Every mile marker after that, he stayed with me. 115, closer. 116, closer still. 117, directly behind the trailer, as if he was holding on to the ICC bumper. My hands were slick with sweat despite the cold. I could smell my own fear, metallic, sharp, mixing with old coffee and warmed vinyl. At marker 118, he was practically at the rear doors. No footsteps, no wind shifts, no impact on the trailer. Just silent, relentless presence. I switched on the CB. Breaker 19, any drivers westbound on 25, talk to me. Anyone got eyes on a hitcher running behind my trailer? Static. One slow wave of it like a sigh. I drove harder. 70. 75. More than I normally push. The truck shuddered slightly from the speed, the steering wheel humming beneath my palms. It didn't matter. Every time I blinked, my eyes snapped back to the mirrors. He was still there, still closer. At marker 119, he was so near the back doors I could make out just a faint shift, like he was leaning forward slightly, as though listening to the engine note. No face, no arms, no shadows, just a tall, pale, vertical form in the dark. I kept driving, didn't stop, didn't breathe right, didn't let the engine dip below 70 once. Somewhere approaching Douglas, the eastern horizon turned a muted shade of gray, morning creeping in. Frost on the fields catching faint color. By marker 120, I checked the mirror again. He was gone. Just empty highway behind me. No figure. No pale shape. No watcher. Sunrise felt like someone exhaled warmth into the world again. But the fear didn't end when the light came. The next night, I parked at a truck stop outside Casper, shut down the engine, and climbed into the sleeper. The cab smelled like fabric softener, old sweat, and the faint chemical trace of window cleaner. When I closed the curtain, something moved in the chrome strip on the door. Faint outline, tall, thin. It wasn't behind me, it was behind my reflection. I froze. The reflection didn't. That silhouette hovered a second, flickered, and vanished as my breath fogged the glass. The entire week that followed, every reflective surface in the cab showed the same thing. Not always clear, not always centered, but always there. A tall, pale figure standing silently behind me. In the microwave door. In the dark window when I parked at night. In the stainless trim of the steering column. Even in the brushed metal of my thermos. Always still. Always close. Never moving. I started covering mirrors with cloth. Avoided looking at chrome. Didn't help. Sometimes I caught him even in the gloss of my phone screen. And every time I passed a mile marker on an empty highway, a part of me braced for him to return. It's been months since then. He watches less often now. Only in cold weather. Only near long, flat stretches of nothing. But sometimes, when the night is quiet enough, I swear I can feel that same shift in the air. That pressure behind me. Like someone tall is standing just outside the glow of the dash lights, patient, silent, waiting for the sun to go down. I've clocked a lot of lonely miles in the Southwest. Arizona especially. Long stretches where the desert feels older than the road itself, where the sky looks too big and the towns feel too tired to stay lit past midnight. This was 2 summers ago, eastbound on Highway 60. I was hauling HVAC units out of California, trying to make Phoenix before dawn. The heat was brutal even after dark. That kind of dry, metallic heat that hangs in the air like a baked smell. My vents blew warm dust no matter how high I cranked the fan. By 1:30 a.m., my fuel gauge dropped lower than I liked. I'd misjudged the last stop and figured I'd hit the next little gas station marked on the GPS. Most of them out there are quiet overnight. One attendant half asleep behind bulletproof glass. Maybe a rancher or two fueling up. Normal stuff. This one wasn't normal. I saw the glow first. A square of warm yellow light in the distance, right where the map said it would be. An old, small station. 2 pumps. flickering canopy lights, the kind of place where the asphalt is cracked and the edges bleed into hard desert dirt. But the weird thing? It looked too alive. Every interior light was on. Cooler lights bright. The open sign glowing steady red. Even the big fluorescent bulbs over the pumps were humming like they'd just been replaced. And there wasn't a single vehicle. No pickups. No compact cars. No other rigs. Not even a parked employee car around back. Just empty light. I rolled in slow, air brake sighing as I stopped next to pump 2. The heat clung to my arms as I stepped down. A thick, throttled warmth that felt almost wet despite the dry desert air. The pump display flickered awake. Prepay inside. Normal enough. Inside, the store looked untouched. Clean. Bright. A faint citrus disinfectant smell mixed with the warm scent of old coffee. The coolers hummed loud enough to echo. But no one stood behind the counter. No radio playing. No clerk staring at their phone. Just an empty stool. Except the coffee. Someone had poured 2 cups. One black, steaming. The other half and half, sugar packet torn open on the counter. Steam curled upward like they'd been abandoned seconds before I walked in. A landline phone sat beside them, a beige relic with push buttons. It rang once as I lifted my hand toward the counter. A single harsh ring, then silence. Cleared my throat. Hello? Anyone working? My voice felt too loud in the bright store. No answer. No movement. Just the quiet hum of refrigeration and the faint buzz of fluorescence. I walked the aisles. Stocked shelves. Fresh sandwiches. Twinkies lined up straight like a training video. No footprints on the floor. No back office door open. No bathroom light. It didn't make sense. Nobody leaves a store lit up like that and just disappears. The phone rang again. Only once. This time, the sound cut clean through the silence, sharp enough to make my chest tighten. I stepped up to the counter again. The black coffee still steamed. The phone rang a third time, and before I could think, I picked it up. Hello! Static flooded the line. Wet, crushing static like someone was breathing underwater. Then a voice forced its way through. A whisper. Torn, distorted, stretched thin. Get out. Now. The line went dead. The store went dead with it. Every fluorescent light snapped off at once. Coolers died. The hum vanished. The citrus smell evaporated into dark warmth. I stood in absolute blackness, one hand clutching the dead receiver, the other gripping the counter edge. My breathing echoed louder than it should have. Then the cooler doors began to shake. Not rattle, not vibrate, shake, hard, repeatedly, like something inside was throwing its weight against the glass. I backed away, heart thudding, eyes wide even though I could barely make out shapes. My boots scuffed the floor, and each sound felt wrong, swallowed by the dead store air. One cooler door banged outward. A deep, heavy thud. Then another. Then another. Each one louder, closer, synchronized like fists pounding to escape. I didn't look back. Didn't breathe right. I sprinted for the exit, shoulder-checking the door so hard it flew open against the hinges. Outside, the air felt cold, impossibly cold compared to moments before. I ran to my truck and launched myself into the cab, slamming the door, locking it, twisting the key so fast my fingers slipped. The engine groaned awake. Lights blinked on. My hands shook on the wheel as I floored it, tires spitting dust as I yanked the rig back onto the highway. As I pulled onto the road, the entire station behind me went black. Not dim, not flicker, dead. Every bulb, every cooler, every pump light, even the open sign vanished like someone pulled the plug on the whole world behind me. The desert swallowed the station in one gulp of darkness. I didn't slow down until I hit cell service 20 miles later. My fingers trembled as I called highway patrol. Yeah, the operator said, voice tired, distracted. We've had reports before. That station burned down in 2018. Electrical fire. Total loss. I stared at the empty highway ahead, dry wind buffeting the cab. No, I whispered. No, I was just inside it. He sighed. Sir, there's nothing there but a concrete slab. It hasn't operated in 5 years. I didn't sleep the next night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those cooler doors bucking against the dark, and I heard that distorted voice hissing through dead phone lines. But the worst part came 2 days later. I stopped at a Pilot for coffee, wiped the inside of my windshield while the truck idled. The glass fogged from the AC, and as I cleared the condensation, I saw it. A faint ring-shaped stain on my driver's side glass. Just the size of a coffee cup. Fresh, wet, perfect. Like someone had set a steaming drink there and watched me through it. I wiped it away, came back the next morning, and the next. Every time I clean the glass, it fades. But at night, when the cab is quiet and the sky goes black, I see it reappear, faint and warm, like a warning pressed from the other side. A reminder. Some stations don't stay closed. Some lights turn back on. Some doors keep shaking, even after the building is gone. Montana in winter is a different kind of empty. You can drive 100 miles and see nothing but white hills and dark sky, like the world has shrunk to 2 colors. The cold isn't just temperature, it's weight. Presses through steel, through insulation, through denim until it settles in your bones. I've driven the High Line 100 times. US Route 2, northern edge of the state. It's lonely, quiet, predictable. But I'll never forget the night I ran it in a blizzard and learned what real fear feels like. It was just past 1 a.m. wind howling, snow sideways, my wipers fighting ice every few seconds. The road was barely visible, just a pair of dull ruts cut through white powder. My headlights didn't light the snow. They just revealed how much of it there was. The cab was warm, almost too warm. A soft hum from the blower, smell of stale coffee in the cup holder, diesel lingering on my jacket. I'd been driving 7 hours straight, hauling medical freight to Kalispell. Light load, but the wind made it feel like I was dragging a parachute. I kept the rig at 40 miles per hour. Any faster and the trailer wandered. The radio was dead. No chatter. No interference. Just the soft hiss of cold static, like the blizzard had choked off half the world. Around mile marker 212, I saw him. At first it was just movement, a flicker of something in the corner of my headlights. I eased off the throttle, squinting through the storm. The snow cleared for half a second as the wind shifted, and there he was, a man walking barefoot along the shoulder. No jacket, no gloves, just a thin white shirt plastered to his back and a pair of soaked pants clinging to his legs. His skin was the kind of pale you only see on people unconscious in hospital beds. His head was down, arms hanging loose, like he'd been walking a long time. I slowed without thinking. Blizzard or not, a man on the road at that hour would die if someone didn't stop. I tapped the air horn lightly and rolled closer. He turned his head toward me. That's when everything went wrong. His eyes weren't dark. They weren't shadowed. They weren't pupils dilated from cold or exhaustion. They were black. Not reflective, completely black. Like someone had scooped out the eyes and filled the sockets with ink. He stared straight into my cab, snow whipping around his face, hair frozen stiff. Then he smiled. His teeth were needle-thin, not sharpened, naturally narrow, like a row of white pins. I felt my stomach drop in a way I've never felt before. The wheel slipped under my hands. Something primal told me not to stop, not to speak, not to even acknowledge that the thing I was looking at belonged to the shape of a man. I downshifted, floored it, and the tires slipped before catching on packed snow. The engine roared as I accelerated through the whiteout. The mirror shook from the ruts in the road, but I checked it anyway. He was still standing in the snow, watching me, and he was smiling wider. I pushed the truck to 50. The trailer swayed. The wind shoved hard, and for a moment I felt the whole rig drifting sideways. I gripped the wheel until my knuckles hurt, forcing the truck straight. The blizzard swallowed everything behind me. For a minute, I thought it was over. Then the snow thinned again. He was standing ahead of me, not walking, not limping, just there, in the center of the lane, facing me as if he'd been waiting. I gasped and jerked the wheel, skidding briefly before the traction control caught. The trailer fishtailed, but I managed to correct in time. When I looked back, he was gone again, the storm burying his silhouette. I tried to calm my breathing. "It's the blizzard," I muttered. "Mirages. Shadow tricks." But my voice didn't sound convinced. At mile 218, the wind dipped for a moment and visibility opened just enough to see the edge of my trailer. He was walking beside it, barefoot, in snow up to his ankles, keeping perfect pace with me at 60 miles per hour. His head hovered at the height of my side mirror, way too tall for any normal man. His face wasn't twisted or angry. It was blank, calm, eyes black as night, fixed straight ahead. Ice formed in my chest. My breathing stuttered. The wheel vibrated under my hands. I blinked, hard. He vanished. The storm closed again. I kept driving, focused, silent, terrified to look away from the road. Then, without warning, he passed me. He walked out of the white curtain to my right, stepped forward, and drifted past my cab like the wind was carrying him. I stared at him for less than a second. Just long enough to see frost steaming off his shoulders, just long enough to see that thin grin still carved into his face, before the blizzard swallowed him again. I didn't slow down, didn't speak, didn't breathe. 10 straight miles, he appeared and disappeared. Sometimes 10 feet from the truck, sometimes half a mile ahead, sometimes a pale blur drifting in my peripheral vision. At one point, he stood on the center line and watched me approach. Snow piled at his ankles, shirt frozen to his ribs. Ice still black, still hollow. I blew past him doing 60. He didn't flinch, didn't turn, didn't follow with his head, just watched. The last time I saw him was mile marker 223. The blizzard thinned, moonlight broke through the clouds, and the snow on the road smoothed into a long, silver river. He was walking directly behind my trailer, barefoot, hands loose at his sides, leaving no footprints, not a single indentation in the fresh snow, just gliding forward, keeping exact pace with me as though the world moved around him, not the other way around. The storm swallowed him again before I could blink. I didn't see him after that. Not once. Not even in the mirrors. I didn't stop until sunrise. I pulled into a rest area near West Glacier and sat in the cab with the engine idling, heater running full blast, hands still trembling. Snow melted off the chrome mirrors. I checked them. Nothing behind me, just clear morning sky. But on the passenger side mirror, something had been etched into the frost. Not scratched, not carved, etched by heat, a bare footprint, perfectly formed. 5 toes, arched sole, pointing toward my cab. It melted within seconds. I've driven that route dozens of times since. I've never stopped in a blizzard again. Never slowed for a figure on the shoulder. Never trusted anything walking alone in the snow. Because in Montana, during the worst storms, some things move faster than trucks. And they're not walking to be rescued. They're walking because they know you'll see them, and they want you to. I've been hauling freight for 14 years. Long enough to see weird things on the road. Long enough to know when something's off. But Kansas has a different kind of quiet. The kind that feels like sound gets swallowed before it reaches your ears. This happened last fall, during a night stop on Route 54. A lonely stretch. Nothing but dark fields, old grain silos, and the wind scraping across the plains like it's trying to peel the asphalt away. I've been running 13 hours, pushing my reset window. My eyelids felt heavy, my hands smelling like diesel and powdered gloves. The cab was warm but stale, the faint scent of old fries lingering from the last stop. My radio had gone silent for the past 50 miles. When I saw the truck stop, a dim, low building glowing weakly against the black horizon, I figured it was time to get coffee and stretch. The parking lot was half full. Reefers humming, a couple of flatbeds, one cattle truck with steam rising from the slats. Wind was cold enough to bite through my jacket as soon as I stepped down. Inside, the place felt frozen in time. Yellowed tiles, buzzing lights, a coffee station that smelled like burned rubber. The dining area had exactly 4 people scattered around. All drivers, all quiet, faces lit by their phones or their plates. Nobody talked. The TV above the counter flickered, struggling to hold a picture. I ordered coffee, sat at a booth, and let the heat seep back into my fingers. The walls hummed faintly with refrigeration. Something dripped behind the grill window. Wind rattled one of the loose glass panes. Then the TV crackled loud enough to make me look up. Emergency weather alert. But the screen didn't show radar or storm patterns. It showed text. White letters. Black background. Attention. All drivers remain indoors. Do not approach your vehicles. Passenger has escaped. I frowned. Passenger? Not suspect. Not fugitive. Not criminal. Passenger. Nobody else in the dining area reacted. Not a head turned. Not a fork paused. Either they didn't hear it, or they didn't want to. The screen flickered again. This time it wasn't text. It was live footage of the parking lot outside. Cold crept up my spine. I recognized the angle-mounted camera near the fuel island. Snowy static filtered the picture, but the shapes were clear enough. Rows of parked trucks. Then the camera panned, slow and deliberate, like someone was controlling it manually, toward my truck. I leaned forward, coffee forgotten. There it was, my rig, white Kenworth, matching the exact position I'd parked in just minutes earlier. The picture zoomed slightly. The license plate came into view. My plate number, clear, center frame, highlighted like the broadcast wanted to make sure I saw it. My mouth went dry. The old-timer in the next booth kept eating like nothing was happening. One driver scrolled his phone. Why wasn't anyone reacting? The screen jerked slightly, camera recalibrating. Then it angled downward, toward the darkness under my trailer. Snowy pixels scrambled for a second. Then a shape emerged. A figure crawling under my rig. Not hurried. Not panicked. Slow. Deliberate. I pushed back from the booth so hard my knee hit the table. What the hell? Nobody looked at me. Not even the cashier. I stood. Took one step toward the window. Watched the screen, heart hammering. The figure moved deeper beneath my trailer. Hands pulling along the frozen ground. Hooded head low. Body thin enough that I could see ribs pressing through fabric. Then the picture cut to static. For half a second, I saw only snow. Then the broadcast returned with new text. Passenger located. Do not exit the building. Do not interfere. My skin went cold. My jacket felt too tight. The air in the dining area felt thick, like the whole room had inhaled at once. I did what no one else seemed willing to do. I ran. Through the doors. Into the cold Kansas night. Across the lot, boots pounding pavement. My breath turned to steam. Trucks loomed like frozen giants. Diesel fumes wrapped around me as engines idled in the dark. I slid around the back of my trailer, panting, flashlight shaking in my hand. Nothing. Just gravel crunching under my boots. The hollow gong of wind hitting the trailer frame. The cold making my eyelashes stick. I kneeled, lowered the flashlight, aimed it beneath the rig. Darkness. No figure. No footprints. No drag marks. Just undisturbed frost. For a moment I thought maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe exhaustion was messing with my head. Then something banged. Inside my trailer. A metallic thud against the floor. Not loud, heavy. Like someone testing the weight of their fist against the metal from the inside. I stumbled backward, flashlight beam bouncing erratically. My chest tightened until the cold felt like it was inside my lungs. I reached for my phone to call 911 and stopped. The windows of the truck stop were pitch black. The TV, the same screen that had shown my truck seconds earlier, was off. Not muted, not lost feed, off, completely black. And in the reflection, I saw myself, standing alone in the dark, with something thin and tall standing behind me, a silhouette stretching long across the pavement. I whipped around. Nothing there. Wind tore across the lot, sending dust and snow swirling. The silhouette was gone. Or maybe it had never been there. I didn't go back inside. Couldn't. I climbed into the cab, locked the doors, turned the engine over. The usual warmth of the heater felt wrong. Too warm, like breath on the back of my neck. My headlights illuminated the truck stop windows as I pulled forward. Still black, still reflective, still empty. As I rolled out of the lot, The CB hissed to life. Dead channel, no chatter. Then a voice whispered through the static. A voice like someone speaking from inside a metal box. Soft. Close. Wet. Passenger remains unaccounted for. I floored it. Didn't look in the mirrors. Didn't stop until I was 100 miles away. When I finally checked the news for outages, fires, anything, there were no reports. Nothing about an alert. Nothing about a suspect or an escape. According to state records, that truck stop hadn't had working cameras in nearly 12 years. And that emergency broadcast channel? Kansas doesn't even operate one at that frequency anymore. I don't know what crawled under my truck that night, but sometimes, when the heater kicks on in cold weather, I swear I hear the faint scrape of fingernails on the metal floor beneath my feet, like something still wants out. I've been running Highway 64 for most of my career, New Mexico into Oklahoma. Long, open stretches where the land turns flat enough that headlights can travel for miles. I know every gas station, every bad shoulder, every dead patch of radio. It was late September, around 11 p.m., when this happened. Weather was perfect. Cool night air drifting through the vents. The smell of sage and dust sliding into the cab. My thermos was still half full. My dash lights dimmed low. The steady hum of the engine settling me into that quiet rhythm that makes the night feel shorter. I was hauling empty pallets, light load, no sway. Just me and the darkness. Near mile marker 217, my high beams picked up something on the shoulder. A man, standing perfectly still. Bright orange vest glowing like a hazard cone. One arm out, thumb raised. Nothing unusual about that on a rural highway. People get stranded, workers walk miles, ranch hands cross the road. But something about him made me ease off the throttle. Maybe it was the way he stood, too still, too straight, like he wasn't bracing against the wind. Maybe it was how clean the vest looked. No dust, no wear, no reflective dulling from sun exposure. Or maybe it was the fact that his head turned toward me before my lights even touched him. Like he knew exactly when I'd appear. I rolled closer, not stopping, just slowing enough to get a good look. The man stepped forward and tapped my passenger window. 2 knuckles. Sharp, fast, like he'd been waiting for the exact moment I'd be within reach. I snapped my head toward the sound. He stood inches from the glass. Eyes fixed on me. Expression blank. No exhaustion. No cold. Just expectation. I didn't roll the window down. Didn't speak. I pushed back on the accelerator. The truck lurched gently, and the man stepped away without flinching. I watched him disappear into darkness through the mirror, the reflective strips of his vest shimmering until the night swallowed them. I exhaled hard. Just a hitcher, I muttered, but my skin felt tight, like the cab had shrunk around me. About 15 minutes later, my GPS chimed. Recalculating route. The screen lit up bright blue in the dark cab. A new line traced itself over my route, cutting sharply off Highway 64 and onto a narrow dirt road I'd never taken. One that didn't even have a proper name, just a county number. At the end of the new route was a single word in bold white text. Stop. No address. No distance. Just stop. My stomach sank. I killed the GPS immediately, thumb pressing the power button hard enough to hurt. The screen shut off. The cab went dim again. The night returned to normal. I told myself it was a glitch. Old unit. Dust in the circuits. Happens all the time. Still, I kept checking the mirrors. Dark fields rolling by. No headlights behind me. No signs of anyone walking the shoulder. 30 minutes went by. The road stretched empty ahead. Then I saw him again. Same bright orange vest. Same posture. Same slow lift of the arm as if hitching. My foot froze on the pedal. It wasn't possible. He couldn't have walked 30 miles in half an hour. There were no cars, no houses, no crossroads he could have taken. But he stood there, not even out of breath. And this time he waved me down. Not desperate, not frantic, but calm, like a traffic controller guiding a plane. As I rolled closer, he stepped into the lane just enough that I had to brake. My headlights washed over him fully. His vest was spotless, his jeans perfectly unwrinkled, not a single grain of dust on him. He leaned slightly toward the cab, lifted a hand, and pointed down the highway. "You missed your turn," he said. Clear voice, low, confident, not shouting over the engine noise, not muffled by wind, perfectly audible like he was standing inside the cab. I didn't answer. I didn't even breathe. He held eye contact, a steady, unblinking stare, then lowered his arm and stepped back, allowing me to pass. I drove, didn't speed, didn't look directly at him, just kept my eyes forward until he vanished in the rearview mirror. When I was far enough away, I pulled onto the shoulder and stopped. My hands were slick with sweat, the wheel vibrating under my palms from the uneven pavement. I forced myself to breathe, forced myself to think. I turned the GPS back on, hoping the glitch was gone. The screen flickered, booted, loaded maps. Then the route reappeared. The same dirt road, the same reroute, and the same single word: stop. A cold shiver crept up my spine, slow and suffocating. I shut the GPS off again. This time, I unplugged it entirely and threw it onto the passenger seat. I drove the next hour in silence. No radio, no GPS, just the sound of tires on asphalt and the faint rattle of loose coins in the cup holder. Every shadow made me jump. Every reflective road sign looked like an orange vest. When I finally reached a busy truck stop near the Oklahoma line, I pulled in fast, parked between two reefers, and killed the engine. The sudden quiet pressed into the cab like a heavy blanket. I climbed into the sleeper, closed the curtain, and tried to convince myself it was a hallucination from fatigue. But just as I was about to drift off, something tapped the side of my cab. Two knuckles. Sharp. Familiar. My blood went cold. I held my breath. The night outside was silent. Then a soft voice, clear as if spoken through the cab wall. "You missed your turn." I didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. After a long minute, the footsteps faded. In the morning, I checked the truck. No footprints in the dirt. No tire marks from a vehicle pulling up. Nothing disturbed. But on the passenger side window, the same one he'd tapped twice, a faint smear remained. Perfect print of two knuckles, pressed from the outside, but warm to the touch. I never drove Highway 64 again at night. Not alone. Not without other drivers nearby. And I haven't used that GPS since. It's buried in a drawer somewhere. But some nights, even now, when I'm running long, empty stretches of road, I still glance at the mirrors expecting to see him standing there on the shoulder. Bright vest, calm posture, hand lifted, waiting to remind me, "You missed your turn." I've driven enough nights to know when something on the road doesn't make sense. Lights behave a certain way. Engines sound a certain way. Even the shadows cast by a moving truck follow rules. What I saw outside Amarillo at 3:10 a.m. didn't follow any rules I know. I was eastbound on I-40 hauling HVAC units, light freight, easy pull. It was a cool night, not cold yet, but cool enough that the air coming through the vents carried a trace of rain and dust. The highway was empty, the sky a flat black sheet. No moon, just the faint glow of distant Amarillo lights behind me. The road noise was steady, tires humming, the occasional hiss as I adjusted cruise. My cab felt warm, almost cozy. The smell of stale coffee and diesel soaked into my shirt, fingers still greasy from adjusting a loose mud flap at the last stop. Around mile marker 86, I caught sight of something in the distance. A tanker truck. Big, long white cylindrical trailer, reflective strips faint in my headlights. Nothing strange about that except it was moving way too slow and completely dark. No marker lights, no flashers, no headlights, just a dead silhouette rolling forward at maybe 15 miles an hour. I eased off the throttle. Something was wrong. Tankers don't run dark like that. It's illegal, dangerous, and impossible unless your entire electrical system is fried. And even then, the driver would be stopped, not creeping along a major interstate at walking speed. I keyed my CB. "Westbound tanker. This is eastbound coming up behind you. You got any issues?" Over. Static. No carrier wave. No click. Nothing. I tried again. Westbound tanker? Do you copy? Silence. As I closed the gap, unease pooled in my stomach. The tanker rolled perfectly straight, like it was on rails. No drift. No correction. Just a slow, steady glide over the asphalt. And it was quiet. Too quiet. Even with my windows up, I should have heard something. Engine rumble, tire whine, something. But all I heard was my own truck and the low whistle of wind nudging the mirrors. I pulled into the left lane to pass. My headlights washed over the tanker's rear. The metal was dull, streaked with grime. Reflective strips were faded and peeling. The DOT numbers were so weathered I couldn't make them out. It looked like it hadn't been washed in years. I crept alongside the trailer, heart thumping harder than it should have. My cab lights cast a soft glow across the tanker's side. Still no engine noise. None. Just the sound of my own rig. When I reached the cab, I flicked my eyes to the driver's window. Pitch black, like someone had covered the inside of the cab with smoke or tar. No shape, no silhouette, no hands on the wheel. Just a void. A thick, dense darkness that didn't match the night outside. My throat tightened. I pressed the CB again. Driver, you awake? You need medical? Give me something. Nothing. I rolled forward a little more, trying to see through the windshield. Same thing. Black. Solid black. Like the cab wasn't empty. Like it was filled with something. I was about to accelerate past when the tanker jerked sideways. Hard. The whole thing swerved into my lane. Trailer whipping slightly. Cab veering toward me with unnatural speed. Instinct took over. I cranked the wheel right, my tires roaring against the rumble strip. My coffee spilled across the console. The truck shook violently as I fought to keep control. The tanker held its angle, pushing, nudging me toward the shoulder. I floored it. My engine roared, RPM spiking as I shot ahead of the tanker. The grill of the other truck filled my mirror. Too close, too fast. Then suddenly, it was gone. Not slowing down, not falling back, just gone. The road behind me was empty. I kept the throttle high until my hands stopped shaking. My heart hammered against my ribs. The cab felt colder now, the warm air replaced by a chill that seeped through the vents. 10 minutes later, desperate for a break, I pulled into a rest stop. A tiny turnout with a couple of picnic benches and 10 parking slots for semis. I parked under a lamp that flickered like it was fighting to stay alive. When I stepped out, the night smelled like wet gravel and old concrete. My boots crunched on loose stones as I walked a slow circle around the rig, trying to convince myself I'd imagined the whole thing. Then I saw it. At the far corner of the lot, backed into the darkest space. The same tanker, same faded stripes, same grime, same DOT numbers half erased by time. My breath froze in my chest. I hadn't heard an engine enter the lot. Hadn't heard tires on pavement. Hadn't seen headlights. There were no fresh tracks in the gravel around it. And the tanker didn't look like it had just driven there. It looked abandoned. Dust coated the wheels. Weeds clung to the undercarriage. Rust crawled up the supports. No condensation on the tank. No heat rising from the engine compartment. The hood was stone cold. I swallowed hard and shined my flashlight through the passenger window. Empty. Completely empty. Not driver slipped out empty. Hasn't been occupied in years empty. Seat cushions torn. Steering wheel cracked. Dashboard coated in dust so thick my breath left patterns in it. I stepped closer. No footprints around the truck. None leading to the road. None leading away. It was like it had materialized there. My flashlight beam skimmed across the door panel and stopped. A faint handprint. Not dusty like the others. Clear. Recent. Pressed from the inside. My skin crawled. A gust of wind swept across the lot, carrying the smell of old steel and cold diesel. The flickering lamp above me hissed like water on a hot pan. I backed away, keeping my eyes on the tanker. When I climbed into my cab and started the engine, the radio crackled for the first time all night. A low, broken whisper filtered through the static. Stop following. My scalp tightened. I shifted into gear. As I pulled out of the rest stop, I checked the mirror one last time. The tanker's cab was no longer empty. A black shape sat behind the wheel, motionless, watching me leave. I didn't stop again until Oklahoma City. Didn't rest. Didn't eat. I kept the cab lights low and my mirrors tilted away so I wouldn't have to see what might drive behind me. That rest stop still shows up on my route sometimes. And every time I pass it, I look just long enough to confirm one thing. The tanker's always there, parked in the same spot, covered in dust, cab cold, engine dead. But some nights, the handprint on the window looks fresher, like something inside keeps trying to get out. I've been running long haul out of Oklahoma City for a while now, long enough to know every dead patch of radio, every way station that closes early, every diner that still makes coffee strong enough to peel your eyelids open at 4 in the morning. This took place on a stretch of rural highway I'd driven 100 times and never thought twice about. It was late October, about 2:20 a.m., the kind of night where the sky doesn't even bother with stars. Just a low, black ceiling pressing down on everything. I was eastbound, light load of boxed electronics headed toward Arkansas. Dry roads, no wind, cool enough that the heater on low kept the cab at that comfortable, drowsy warmth. The radio was quiet. CB on channel 19 just out of habit, FM turned down to a murmur. The hum of the tires and the low drone of the engine blended into a kind of white noise that made the miles slide by. The highway out there is simple. 2 lanes, long and straight, with fields on either side. No real towns for stretches, just occasional clusters of trees and the faint silhouettes of barns if you know where to look. I remember glancing in my mirror and seeing nothing but darkness. No one behind me, no one in front, just my own reflection faint in the glass, washed in the dim glow of the dash. Somewhere past a faded green sign for a town I'd never actually seen in daylight, they appeared. A pair of headlights in my rear view. At first I didn't think much of it. Just another late-night driver catching up. The lights were distant, soft. Then they grew clearer, round, pale, not too bright but steady. No bouncing, no weaving. I figured they'd pass me on the next straight, so I eased off a couple miles an hour to give them the easy option. The lights eased off too. Exactly. I frowned, nudged the throttle. My speed climbed a few ticks. The headlights behind me tightened their gap, then held. Too close, too steady. There's a rhythm to following distance at night. People back off or they crowd you and then think better of it. These lights didn't do either. They stayed fixed like someone had painted them in place on the glass. I reached for the CB mic. Eastbound, you ridin' my bumper, or you want around? Come on. Nothing. No crackle. No carrier. No lazy go-ahead driver. Just the soft hiss of empty channel. Cleared my throat and tried again. 4-wheeler or straight truck behind me. You got a copy? Silence. The hair on my arms prickled. I told myself they might just not be a CB type. A lot of folks aren't. The road straightened out for a long stretch. I flipped my rear camera display on, a little screen above the dash that shows what's directly behind the trailer. Company installed them after a rear-end claim a few years back. The feed blinked on. Empty road. No headlights. No hood. No grill. Just my trailer's shadow stretching down the center line and the faint texture of the asphalt. I checked the mirror again. The headlights were still there. 2 perfect white circles hovering at the same distance. Too close, just on the edge of what should have been visible on that camera. My mouth went dry. I leaned forward slightly, as if that would somehow change the angle. Camera, empty. Mirror, headlights. The only sound in the cab was the engine and my own breathing getting louder in my ears. I turned the camera off. My thumb hovered over the switch longer than it needed to. Fatigue, I muttered. Eyes playing tricks. I blinked a few times, rolled my shoulders, took a long sip of lukewarm coffee. The bitterness grounded me a little. My fingers left damp prints on the thermos. 10 minutes went by, maybe more. The highway stayed empty in front of me, dark and endless. Behind me, the headlights clung to my bumper like they were tethered. They never drifted, never bounced, never flared over a bump. Just 2 cold points of light. I tried the usual test, slowing to almost under the limit. dropped down to 50. The truck behind me, if there was a truck, should have gotten impatient, taken the other lane and blown by. The lights slowed with me. Exact. No lag, no hesitation. Like we were one unit. I pushed it the other way. Rolled the throttle. 55. 60. 62. My truck responded, the vibration through the floor changing pitch. The lights never changed their distance. I felt sweat gather under my shirt even though the cab was comfortably warm. I cracked the window an inch. The cool air smelled like damp dirt and cut hay. Should have been calming. It wasn't. At some point, the road curved gently to the right, the way it always did around an old, dried-up creek bed. I'd driven that curve enough times to know the exact feel of it. This time, as I leaned into it, the headlights behind me didn't shift the way they should have. They didn't arc across the mirror. They just stayed fixed, as if the world bent around them instead. That's when I started to really believe something was wrong. I keyed the mic again, voice lower. Any drivers eastbound between Elgin and the 70 split? You see anyone on my back door? I'm looking for confirmation. Dead air. The CB has a particular kind of silence when no one's there. That night, it sounded thicker somehow, like the static itself was listening. I drove like that until the clock on my dash clicked over to 4:07 a.m. I remember the time because the first thin line of gray touched the horizon ahead. The sky was still mostly black, but the darkness had started to lose depth. The headlights were still there. I watched them while the sky slowly lightened. My eyes burned from shifting focus between the road ahead and the mirror. The fields on either side began to reveal themselves. Flat land, fence posts, occasional lonely trees. The brighter it got, the weaker the headlights looked. Not like they were turning off, more like fog thinning out. The circles lost their sharpness. The white faded toward gray. By the time the sun finally broke, a dull, pale disk dragging itself over the world, the lights were gone. One blink, they were faint. Next blink, nothing. The mirror showed only empty highway stretching back, washed in that washed-out early morning color. I drove another 20 miles before I saw a diner I knew. A low, squat building with a faded sign boasting the best biscuits on 64, which is a low bar, but they try. I pulled in, set the brakes, and sat for a second with my hands still locked around the wheel. Inside, the diner smelled like bacon grease, dish soap, and cheap coffee. A jukebox in the corner sat dark. The booths were half full of early locals and a couple of other drivers. I took a stool at the counter. The vinyl creaked under my weight, and it felt weird to sit somewhere that wasn't vibrating under me. An older driver slid onto the stool one seat down. Gray beard, sun-cracked hands, company jacket so faded I couldn't read the logo. He gave me the kind of nod drivers give each other when they're too tired for small talk. "You running east?" he asked, voice rough. "Yeah," I said. "Came through from the city. Long stretch of nothing back there tonight." He studied my face for a second like he was checking something only he could see. "Headlights?" he asked. My stomach dropped. I hadn't mentioned them. Not to him. Not to anyone. I tried to play dumb. "What kind?" "In the mirror," he said, stirring sugar into his coffee without looking away. "Too close. Too steady. Never pass. Never fall back. Stay with you till dawn. Then fade out like they were never there." The clink of his spoon against the mug was too loud. I swallowed. "You've seen them?" He nodded slowly. "Long time ago. Out on this same stretch. Back when my hair wasn't this color and the trucks were more steel than plastic." He took a sip, gaze drifting to the window where the highway cut across the view. "Thought I was losing my mind." "What are they?" I asked before I could stop myself. He shrugged, shoulders rising and falling under the worn jacket. "Story goes there was a driver out here in the late 80s. Ran this corridor regular. One night, he spotted something up the road, jackknifed rig in the dark, maybe, or a hazard on the shoulder. Nobody agrees on that part. What they agree on is he got on the radio and tried to warn folks behind him. He set the mug down gently. Didn't finish the message. They found what was left of his truck in a field half a mile off the highway. No skid marks. No sign he even tried to brake. I stared at the black surface of my own coffee. It smelled burnt and bitter but suddenly felt important to hold on to. You think that's who it is? I asked. Back there. The old driver's eyes were tired, but clear. I think there's something out here that never got to say what it needed to say. Maybe it's a man. Maybe it's just what's left of one. Some nights, it finds another set of taillights to follow. Trying to warn them? I asked. Maybe. He gave me a look that made the hair on my arms stand up again. Or maybe it doesn't know the crash is over. Maybe it just replays the last thing it knows how to do. We sat there in silence for a minute, the clatter of plates and low murmur of other conversations filling the space between us. Outside, the highway looked ordinary. A pickup rolled past, sunlight catching its hood. You see them again, he said quietly, not looking at me this time. Don't slam the brakes. Don't try to chase him. Don't talk to him like they can fix anything for you. What do I do then? I asked. He sipped his coffee, gaze far away. You keep your lane. You keep your speed. You let him go when the sun comes up. I finished my breakfast eventually, but it tasted like cardboard. When I climbed back into my cab, the seat felt different. The mirrors felt different. Every reflective surface had weight now. I've driven that stretch since then. Not often, not by choice, but freight goes where freight goes. Some nights, when the road is empty and the sky is thick and starless, I'll glance up and catch a glimmer in the mirror. Two small points of light way in the distance. If they're just regular headlights, they act like they're supposed to. They pass. They fall back. They leave. But once in a while, just for a mile or two, they hang there. Too close. Too steady. And when that happens, I don't touch the brakes. I don't grab the mic. I just keep my hands tight on the wheel and wait for dawn. Because out here, not every set of headlights is trying to pass you. Some of them are just trying over and over to finish a warning they never got to give.